Good afternoon, Vandal fans, and welcome to another edition of Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and I'm joined alongside with Luis, the Godfather Torres. Here we're going to talk about some men's basketball, some women's basketball, and then we have some updates on the women's tennis team, the Big Sky Conference Indoor Championships for track and field, and then the swim and dive WAC Championships, and a surprise finish by a young freshman. But first, obviously, Luis, let's talk about the big games yesterday. Men's basketball hosted Eastern Washington at the Memorial Gym, not at the Cowan Spectrum, and came away with a very surprising 66-62 victory over the Eagles. Really held the Eagles' offense in check. This Eastern Washington productive offense is known for being one of the best in the country. I believe it's ranks 10th in points per possession with like 1.133 and 18th in scoring, and the Vandals held them to 62 points on the entire day. And it was really interesting to see that sophomore guard Victor Sanders and junior guard Perion Calendret didn't really have a huge impact for the Idaho offense in the first half. I believe at one point they had only combined for, I want to say, 2 points near the final minutes of the first half before Sanders stepped it up a little bit. But despite that, some other players stepping up for Idaho. Sanders did finish with 16 as the leading scorer of the game. But Arkady McCutcheon had a really good showing, 11 points. And just as a whole, 4 Vandals in double figures, and that's something you want to see from Berlin's offense.
Yes, most definitely you need to see them performing that kind of offensive game, and the fact that they lowered it down to 66-62 the final score, that is really huge when you had a tough team like Eastern Washington going in unknowingly. What kind of team is going to show up? The defensive scheme that they were really good in most of the season, or the kind of game that we had against Sacramento State. And for this outcome, this really pays a lot. It makes a huge impact, and despite not having the top scorers really have that big of a numbers like they're used to, and have more like McCutcheon and I believe Chris Sarbaugh as well, it really shows that they're really there as a team, that if somebody can't really step it up, the others got to get to it, which I'll discuss more in the other game later in the program. But this is definitely a huge win, especially at a gym where, yes, they have practiced several times throughout the year, but they keep kind of like their Memorial Gym record intact. They have done solid when they needed to do, especially since they haven't played since CSU Bakersfield in late November, early December. It's been a while.
Yes.
And the fact that they're able to beat a huge team and get themselves into position in that top 4 spot, it's gonna come back to bite Eastern Washington, and it's gonna really be beneficial for Idaho if it hasn't been already.
Yep, Idaho right now is currently tied for 3rd in the conference standings. The Vandals have a 10-6 record in Big Sky play, but so do 3 other programs. Idaho State, Eastern Washington, and I believe North Dakota are all fighting for the final 2 seeds. Weber State and Montana have essentially just automatically earned the top 2. Not sure which one will emerge with the number 1 seed overall, but the Vandals are in the hunt for those one of those 2 remaining spots. And I believe right now they have a 3-1 record against the other teams that they're tied with. The one loss came to Eastern Washington, but they do face Idaho State next Saturday and Weber State on Thursday. So it'll be a little tough for the Vandals, especially a scary play near the end of the game. Junior guard Perion Calendret came down with the rebound, but he collided with several Eastern Washington defenders, immediately fell to the floor, was clutching his right foot. For those of you who don't know, he had a lingering foot injury for essentially a month since the last time, ironically, they played Eastern Washington January 9th. It wasn't until a couple weeks ago where he even returned to the court. And, it's that point in the season where Don Verlin said they're going to just kind of have to play him. Let me find his exact quote on the subject, because I thought it was a little surprising. But he said, quote, "I think it's something we're at this stage in the year where he's going to have to deal with it and play through it." What I think he needs is about 4 weeks off, but we can't take 4 weeks off right now, end quote. Calandret did walk to the locker room. However, he did reappear a couple minutes later, checked into the game briefly before checking back out. There wasn't a play run or anything. The officials stopped to review something on the game clock. But
those dreaded reviews. When the refs check something, you think it'll be quick. Nope, it takes about 5 minutes, especially like late in the game when it's really close, or even not even close. They just take like forever. It seems like forever, and you would imagine that the fans would probably get annoyed if it keeps happening on a regular basis. It's kind of been the scene throughout the season, especially mostly on Thursday games. As writers and everything, is just kind of like when they're very delayed, very taking forever. It's just because sometimes I understand they have to look at it very carefully, want to make the best decision. But as far as like us writers is concerned, it can be cringeworthy when we have a tight deadline. It's kind of like the feels.
a positive sight for Vandal fans was that junior walk-on Ty Egbert was participating in warm-ups with the team. He was doing some soft two-handed dunks. He was landing on his foot. Okay, he didn't play, but it's certainly a good sight to see, especially with the recent slew of injuries. I'm guessing, although the Vandals might have everybody back, depending on Calendar's status, actually, but they really might not be 100% even with everybody on the court, like how they want. But some interesting stats from the game. Eastern Washington essentially got all but 3 of its points from its 5 starters. Venky Joyce had 16, Felix von Hoff had 10, Bogdan Blizniuk had 12, Austin McBroom had 11, Julian Harrell had 10, so they're all kind of in the same range. But then the only other person who scored was Sir Washington with 3. And the other 3 subs almost didn't even attempt a single shot. Meanwhile, on the Idaho side, Chris Sarbaugh had a very productive day. 12 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists in 34 minutes of play. Victor Sanders, after a little bit of a slow start, 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 of 5 shooting from behind the arc. Chad Sherwood, who started in place of Calendret, 0 for 4 from the field. Not essentially the day he was hoping for, or Verlin was hoping for in starting him. Arkady McCutcheon, great game from him, 5 of 8 from the floor, 6 rebounds, 10 points overall. It's great to see him contributing. I think that's something that they've been hoping for all season, but with his injury too, that I feel has really kind of impacted his game with his knee. But good to see him kind of heating up a little bit now before the final week of play, and then the conference postseason tournament the week after that. Nate Sherwood, 5 of 8 from the floor, 2 rebounds, 11 points in 31 minutes of play. So, but yeah, Calendret 7 points on 2 of 8 shooting, so he didn't really have the best game, but he did hit a crucial 3-pointer down the stretch to, I believe, extend Idaho's lead. And he and Victor Sanders actually had a really hot hand in the second half, hitting some key 3-pointers. I believe there was a 4-point play in particular where he hit the shot. Oh no, I take that back. He was fouled shooting a 3, and he made all 3 free throws to make the game 65-62. And after the game, the Eastern Washington head coach was talking to reporters, and I overheard him say, he seems to always get those calls, and I wonder why. And then he gestured with a little bit of a leg kick, which is not a staple of Sanders' shooting form, but it has been a little noticeable. He kind of kicks his legs out when he goes up for the jumper, and it's resulted in him being fouled quite a lot, getting a lot of free throws from it.
Yeah, it's just part of the nature of basketball. It's just Victor being Victor. It's just when he's ready, when he gets going, he gets going. And looking at the stat sheet, 16 points. That shows you that even if he missed seven games, he still pretty much has it, and they're really gonna need him. It's depending on how calendar it is right now after what happened yesterday afternoon. So this is a great showing for Sanders, and I think they gotta be, it's gotta be nothing. It's gotta be nothing but smiles from the coaching staff that Sanders is still keep doing what he's doing, and that's gonna really help him going into the tournament.
And I thought this was very, very surprising. Idaho, 0% from three-point range in the first half. They only attempted 6 shots, and they finished the game shooting only 16 attempts. This is compared to Eastern Washington, who launched it up almost 30 times and hit 9 of those shots. But I guess besides Victor hitting a few of those three-pointers in Perion, there was only one other three-pointer, and that was from Nate Sherwood, who's really more of a power forward than anything else.
Yeah, power forward and a freshman is like that. This was part of the nature of playing in the down the home stretch. You got to try different things, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So far, it seems like been working just fine to keep Eastern Washington to this few points that they're used to. That's just really astonishing. That is a huge win for them. Now, my question for you is kind of describe kind of like the crowd atmosphere. Obviously, I was covering the women's game. I wasn't able to really see what went down, but based on what I'm hearing, it was really intense.
It's always different when you play in Memorial Gym as opposed to the Cowan Spectrum. The Cowan Spectrum possesses more of a collegiate atmosphere that you would find at other Division I programs, I would say. They convert the Kibbe Dome into a basketball court. They drop these huge black drapes down, roll out one set of bleachers for the students on the other side, but then essentially just use the football stands as seating. And I understand, I like that feel because it makes it feel more collegiate. I feel, though, that everybody's a little bit more spread out in the Cowan Spectrum, and fan noise doesn't exactly have much influence on anything. You have to really pack the Cowan Spectrum for the fans to really provide much momentum for the Vandals. But that's something I like about Mem Gym. I think it's really small. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I like how there is a track and seating essentially right above the court. It feels like it packs the fans closer. And because it's one of those older style gyms, noises echo a lot more than they usually would. And so it gets loud very quick. And late in the second half of the game against Eastern Washington, it got a little noticeable. Senior guard Chris Sarba actually said that he was trying to shout instructions to Arkady McCutcheon down in the post, but Arkady couldn't hear him, and then Arkady was shouting back, and Chris couldn't hear him, and that's just how loud it kind of got in there. And
this is sort of how it kind of reminds me how like it's a different sport and everything. It kind of reminds me how I would imagine how when the Bears played the Miami Dolphins in '85, when they had that their only loss of the season, that the crowd kind of took a huge impact. It's so hard to listen, and that's what happens sometimes. It's kind of like very difficult to listen. It could somewhat negatively impact the team, but the fact that they hung through it and they still find a way to manage it, it's just really impressive, especially for a home team. That could be sometimes like an advantage or disadvantage. The disadvantage is when you're unable to make a call that noticeable that it's just going to be hard. They gotta have to find ways. So it's just part of the atmosphere aspect that you gotta kind of adapt when you aren't able to hear one another. You gotta find a way to do it. And the fact that they still hung on and win, because sometimes I would imagine, cannot be easy, especially if they're not used to this kind of atmosphere when they play at the Memorial Gym only a few times a year, most of the season at the Cowan Spectrum.
And looking at the official attendance numbers, they said 1,500 yesterday. That's not even close. I believe what their mark this season was 4,500 against Washington State. If
it would make sense that
if it's not 4,500 against Washington State, then it's about 7,000 against Wazoo, and 4,500 against the next biggest opponent, which I believe was Montana. But yeah, it's a way that it makes the crowd seem larger than they are being in the Memorial Gym. Obviously, 1,500. It's not a huge number when compared to other programs, but it essentially felt like a sold out arena. I get that it's the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, and they have to clear out the KB Dome, but I'm not. I don't know. I see the allure of playing like a game or two there every season, but I definitely wouldn't want to make it a staple of the program just because I don't know. It feels more like a high school gym, like an older, more vintage high school gym than a collegiate atmosphere, and I believe that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, when you have the pillars,
yeah,
right.
They're trying to build that new arena. I don't quite know the latest news on that. I will definitely need to look into that before our next program. But
It's been a while since I've heard something about reconfiguring or building a new stadium. I think it's been circulating when I arrived here almost 3 years ago.
see, I would be really excited to see how that turns out and to see some more planning as far as that goes. But it is what it is. Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival is very good for our university, and it was. And playing in Memorial Gym is not the worst thing they could do. I mean, it's like I said, it's a unique atmosphere, and for a rivalry matchup, it was definitely added a different dimension to the game, and it was something that Idaho head coach Don Berlin and senior Chris Sarva said really helped them down the stretch. So I guess let's talk a little bit about the standings right now for the Big Sky on the men's side before we head over to the women's game. There's almost what you would say a flip-flop of what people expected to happen, so to say, in that the men's team won and the women's team fell. But
Yeah, I'll get into the women's because I pretty much Coach,
hold on, let's talk the standings real
No,
quick.
I know. I got a lot to say about it, mainly from newly said, but go on with the standings.
Weber State currently number 1 with a 14-2 record. Montana 13-3 record. They're number 2. The four-way tie for third place: Idaho, Eastern Washington, North Dakota, Idaho State, all with a 10-6 record. The next closest competitor is Montana State with a 7-9 record. So it essentially is those 4 teams vying for 2 spots. And looking at it right now, North Dakota seems to be the hot team. They're on a 3-game win streak. Idaho State just won their last one. Eastern Washington has a 2-game skid, so we'll see if they're able to correct the skid. But yeah, four teams, 2 spots. It's going to be a tight finish on the men's side, and we'll have to see what happens. But next week, the Vandals will be back at the Cowan Spectrum. They host Weber State Thursday. It's going to be a very difficult game for the Vandals. Weber State is 22-7 overall. But however, they are only 6-5 on the road, so a potential winnable game for the Vandals. But they are facing a team with a 6-game win streak.
It's different when we bring up Weber State. They usually are a win streak, and it will be very difficult for Idaho to find a way to capitalize. They continue their momentum, but considering the road record being 6-5 for Weber State, it should make it a very interesting game. But they also may have to require the other teams that are tied with Idaho to kind of have struggled quite a bit. But I think they could pull it off. I would not be surprised if they pull it off. It will be huge.
They are facing a team that they are tied with
Yep.
for 4th place. They do play Idaho State Saturday at the Cowan Spectrum. Both those games are at 7, and Vandal Nation will provide some coverage of that. But all right, let's move to the women's side. Luis, you covered the game. I only saw the tail end of it, which was not very pretty.
No, it was not. It was not very pretty. It seems like they were out of sync. They were having a real hard time guarding. And John Newley was anything but happy about after the game. So much that he pretty much said that he was very disappointed that they didn't guard him. They said if they play like they did from here on out, they're gonna have a short trip to Reno. It's like if they were gonna win championships, they can't play like they did. So it was not a good game at all, especially in the final quarter when they pretty much lost all their momentum that they had, all their energy. And I didn't knew about this until like late in the fourth quarter when they were just struggling. I looked at the show because I was watching the game. I was paying attention to who was doing really well, And then I realized that, wait a minute, somebody's missing. And then I realized it was senior guard Christina Salvatore, who did not play at all with, according to Newly, he said a foot injury. And because of the foot injury, from Idaho, Vandal radio announcer Tom Purvis said it ended a 123 consecutive games that she has played. So that ended a long streak, and this couldn't have not happened at an absolute worst time of the season, when you have pretty much your top defender, who pretty much is very versatile on the court, fall down, and it's just a matter of who's going to step up. And Newly felt like not many, with the exception of probably Michaela Ferenc, stepped up. So it was a very disappointing game that what could have been pretty much winnable at least. It just slipped in the hands. It was 84-70 the final score. Idaho are pretty much are third in the standings, but Eastern Washington has sole possession of number 2 after Idaho's loss.
Yeah, huge games for both the men's and women's programs, not only yesterday, but heading into the week to see where they end up. If we're looking at the women's standings right now, Idaho, well, if they had won, I'd almost say they would have clinched a postseason first-round bye. But as of right now, the team is 12-4. They're in third. Right now, 2 teams are tied for fourth with an 11-5 record. That is Montana State and North Dakota. Vandals are 1 game behind Eastern Washington for the number 2 seed, but that would require, I believe, 2 Eastern Washington losses and 2 Idaho wins, because the Vandals do not have the tiebreaker. Eastern Washington took both games from Idaho. So I guess right now, if the Vandals can win their last 2 games, and I think they are somewhat winnable games, Weber State is a tough opponent. They're 10-6 right now, but if the Vandals can get past them, then I think they will have secured a first-round bye, because their next game on Saturday against Idaho State with a 6-10 conference record and a 2-game losing streak right now. So, interesting dynamics. I think it knocks the women's team a little bit further down than they want to be, but I think they could really be a dark horse in the postseason tournament March 7th, just because I think they have that offensive firepower. And there was a stretch of the season where they literally looked like the Big Sky team to beat, and right now they've been a little shaky, haven't exactly been consistent.
No,
the most consistent.
Yeah, especially when they trail. Like I said multiple times, they got to play all 4 quarters, and with the exception of Sacramento State, which we won by 47 points, they have struggled at least one quarter. They struggled, and in this game alone yesterday, they struggled in more than just one quarter. In my book, they had a strong run near the end of the first half, but then in the second half, there's something just felt weird, and there was something amiss, and it just really became very detrimental. They got into a lot of foul troubles, including Allie Ford, who ended the night with 14 points. Newly said that he really wanted to put Allie into the court late in the going, but she already was in foul trouble with 4. That it kind of became too little too late, and he said there was basically no excuses of their yesterday's loss. Everybody needed to step up. Everybody's been hurt, and every team it didn't matter if who was hurt or which team. Everybody stepped up, and at this point, not many stepped up. Like, with only 3 games to go at that point, now 2. It's getting into crunch time, and I understand why Newly was completely upset about the loss, and the fact that 3 Vandals had double-digit points compared to Eastern Washington's 4. Carly Wilson had 11, Allie Ford with 14, and Michaela Ferenc, who filled in for Salvatore as a starter, earned a career-high 26 points, which is the second most by a Vandal scorer of the season.
I'm a little surprised, and I'm not. This is no disrespect to Idaho coach John Newly. I'm a little surprised Ferenc is still a reserve player. Obviously, she's a key 6th man role, essentially, but I feel like she's been really productive as of late. I understand she's a freshman. She may not have all this experience. Maybe that's something he sees in that maybe she's not going to be consistent. But I think she has a lot of talent, and along with her and Taylor Pierce, the Vandals women's basketball team has a bright future. But as of right now, they are very much in the hunt for not only a first-round bye in the postseason tournament, but they could very well be one of the teams playing in the championship game next month.
Yeah, without a doubt, they have the talent. It's just the matter of the team stepping up. Ferenc was one of the few people that newly said that stepped up and really did good in guarding. Offensive, no surprise. It wasn't surprised how she did, but defensively, he was basically happy to guard down one of the top scorers of Haley Hodgins, she only scored 18 points. It wasn't the highest scorer. Tisha Phillips with 22 ended up being the highest scorer of the game for Eastern Washington. It's just he felt that she did a nice job on covering Hodgins, and there was some pressure. She said, Ferenc said after the game, she felt pressure of kind of like Big Shoes to feel kind of play like Sal or Christine in this case. But I think she did a nice job filling in. It's just a matter she needed help from the other players down the stretch, which definitely was not the case. And they got to step it up when they go down on the road, because the road games are the huge test of whether you're a contender or a pretender, unfortunately, because you got to be good on both ends. And I think they got to, when they play Weber State, they got to come with a sense of urgency and have more than just one player have a nice game and stay out of foul trouble.
Can you talk a little bit about the silver lining from the game as it relates to the record, the team record that they set, the single season?
Yes. We're talking about the 3 points, right? The shots beyond the arc.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes, okay. I was going to talk about it. Among the 26 points, Ferenc had 6 of them go from behind the arc, and one of them ended up being the 290th of the season, which broke the school record. It has to show you that that's what Idaho has been has done a phenomenal jump from the 3-point line. They have been excelling in that remark. They broke the school record, and it's going to continue scoring more threes. However, in spite of that, they made 10 out of the 23 compared to Eastern Washington's 8 of 14, so they're still effective. Behind the arc was Ferenc shooting 6 of them. It shows you that even though it wasn't the prettiest game that Idaho has had all year, they still had. I think they should be proud of breaking that record, the school record, that shooting a lot of threes, because they've been really effective with Ferenc and Pierce, to name a few. And I think all credit goes to those two in particular, especially freshmen, that they have been one of the more effective 3-pointers. And like when you need a 3-point shot later to go, you can rely on Ferenc or Pierce. So. And I think not all the credit, but main credit goes to them, and I think they've done a phenomenal job. And I think had they tried to go for more threes, I think they could have probably got a couple more. But by that point of the game, I think the confidence level was a little bit down. They didn't have the energy, knowing. Yeah, and this is the thing. Another thing that Ferenc said after the game, that they knew that they were going to have to play without Christina early in the week. And the fact they needed to find ways to really step up, and it's just finally surprising that they were not able to do it.
Yeah, it was. Have you heard anything on the official? It's an injury, correct?
A foot injury, according to what I heard in the commentary from Tom Purvis, who also brought up the 123 consecutive games that he played that ended.
Interesting. I had not heard anything about the injury until yesterday, so maybe Newly was keeping that a little hush-hush until game time. But
yeah, I thought when I didn't see Salvatore in the lineup, I was thinking, she's just going to set up for the game, kind of rest her up for a big picture, kind of like what Popovich does sometimes with the Spurs.
Right.
But that was definitely not the case when Purvis said that Salvatore was out with a foot injury, like late in the fourth quarter. It's like, wow, that is definitely not good news for Idaho. They did not need it, and it proved costly, and they kind of needed her, but also they needed other players to step up.
Yeah. Well, we will take a quick break for station identification and a little station promo. Stay tuned. You're listening to 4th and Downtown. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to 4th and Downtown. I'm Josh Grissom, the Argonaut Sports Editor. I'm joined with Vandal Nation manager Luis the Godfather Torres. And in the final 15 minutes of our program, we're going to deviate a little from the norm, and we're going to discuss some of the bigger issues in sports nowadays, not just Vandal athletics, but professional sports as well. But first, let's touch on this interesting tidbit I just saw the other day. Former Vandal Stacy Barr, if you remember, was a huge part of the University of Idaho women's basketball program last year. Did a fantastic job. Was one of the key leaders of the team, and really led the Vandals to be competitive. She scored 618 points at Idaho last season. She scored 21.3 points a game. It's the fifth best single season scoring total in Vandals history. She decided to play professional basketball back in her home country of Australia, and she signed with the Perth Lynx, and she has been part of this team that has reached the grand final, essentially the championship of the Women's National Basketball League in Australia. It's the first time that the Perth Lynx have been in the grand final since 1999, and the first time that they could win a title since, I think it's been like 24 years for them. So congratulations to former Vandal Stacy Barr, just tearing it up in Australia and being an integral part of that team. I was looking for stats online. It seems like they don't have stats, but I will contact their media relations department to see if we can get any more info and perhaps schedule an interview with her. I think this is a great story about one of our former athletes really excelling on the court, and we want to wish her the best of luck in the grand final. They just won the semifinal the other day, so fantastic job for her and the team, and we will provide updates as they happen as far as that goes. But Luis, let's talk about some of the things going on in sports today. Spring training officially begins today, not for the Mariners, but for the Philadelphia Phillies. The team is playing its always starts off the year playing kind of essentially an exhibition game, and they're facing the University of Tampa. And if you remember last year, the Philadelphia Phillies actually lost to the University of Tampa. I'm going to look up the score of that game because it was really, really surprising. But let's see if I can find this. I think it was like 6-2.
What has happened? I know it's a spring training game and an exhibition, so I can't really say much. But it's like, what has happened to the Phillies? I remember 5-7 years ago, they were one of the top pitching teams in the league. They were World Series contenders year after year with the days of Cliff Lee. Now they're just one of the bottom tier teams. I don't know. It's like, it shows you how things have changed in baseball and how teams can be great for a couple years and then crash and burn a little bit. And this is just kind of like, they have to have a chip on their shoulders when they face Tampa. It's just like, you lost to a college team. I know it's an exhibition.
Not just a college team, a Division II college team. They're not even Division One. They won 6-2 last year. They hit a grand slam in the 7th inning to win the game.
Wow.
Just surprising, and that's what I wanted to bring up.
Oh yeah, they go to 6 innings in spring training. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to talk right now about cities in cities across the country, where they're at with their sports franchises, and we'll start with Philadelphia and just how bad the teams have been as of late. The saving grace of Philadelphia is the Flyers, who are usually pretty competitive in the NHL. But looking at these records, the Phillies last year, 63-99, one game from losing 100 games, one of the worst records in Major League Baseball. Actually, the worst record in the National League. The Philadelphia Eagles, 7-9. They were in a conference where they actually could have still gotten a playoff spot.
The NFC East was atrocious, more atrocious than the South. The thing with the South is you have the Panthers, but Atlanta disappointed. New Orleans just not the same. Tampa are slowly but surely growing. Give them about 2 or 3 seasons and they could be competitive. I would imagine. But besides the NFC South, with they have so much potential. The NFC East is just not doing phenomenal. Dallas, don't even get me started with Dallas. They were atrocious, beyond atrocious last season. I think we're like number 2, number 3 in the draft this season. Really up, and like I know it's definitely the first 5 picks for sure.
Right. Let's get back to Philadelphia. Their basketball team 8-50. Luis, what do you do if you're a city if you're a fan of any of these programs of a city where they just can't seem to catch a break in any of these sports?
You gotta have to fight through it and get some need a lot of saving grace from the GM side and the ownership side to make some changes to kind of help the team get in the right direction. But it's gotta be hard to root for any Philly team that knowing that they're just not good or struggling. It's just like I've never been in that situation. Sort of like been through a town that's just used to losing that many games or having not so great performances. It's gotta be tough. And you just gotta have to fight through it and be loyal as you can be in a generation where loyalty is kind of like not seen unless you emphasize it to somebody how loyal you are. It's just difficult to kind of bear the struggles of like I don't know how Cleveland. It reminds me of Cleveland. I don't know how they can stick through those Cinderella teams or not so good teams for that many years and win nothing out of it.
Right. Yeah, it's just a tough year. Actually, it'd probably be a tough few years for Philly fans. But if we look at this, on the flip side, I'd say a team or a city that's had a lot of success in recent years is Oakland. And you're like, what do you talk about? The A's aren't really good. Yeah, last year they weren't good.
No, they were.
But the year before that, they reached the playoffs. And the Oakland Raiders, I believe, had an 8-8 record on the year for football.
I think they did end up 8-8. It's just like with the Raiders, it seems like they seem like when they're there, but then the next season it's just a different story. It seems like they like every other year they have that good, okay season, but much better than the previous.
But obviously, the standout team for the Bay Area right now is Golden State with a 53-5 record in the NBA, probably on pace to set the single season greatest mark quite handily. We'll see about that in the final few weeks of the year, but they should have lost last night. But Stephon Curry hit essentially a 38-foot shot from just in front of the half-court mark to beat the Thunder in overtime in a game where the Thunder definitely should have won that. Some really huge mistakes by the team down the stretch. But yeah, right now I'd say Oakland's stock is rising. Philadelphia's stock is pretty low right now. But yeah, there's just I guess, Luis, can you think of any other cities off the top of your head that are currently on the downslide or on the upswing?
But I have to go with Atlanta being one of them. It seems like, to some degree, it seems like they can be good, but they just can't find a way to pull it off. It's just, but I'm not sure what other team besides Philadelphia that I'm thinking that is just not doing good. I'm not, maybe. Let's see.
Well, I'd say Cleveland. Well,
yeah,
Cleveland's
you have the Cavs.
Yeah, the Cavs are good. I don't know if they'll be able to compete with the Warriors, but the Cavs are good. And as far as Atlanta is concerned, they do have a pretty decent team in the Eastern Conference with the Hawks in the NBA, 32-27, but they are 5th right now in the conference playoffs. Generally, the Eastern Conference is a little bit weaker than the Western Conference, and the NBA probably need to do something about that. But
yeah, it seems like Atlanta stands out because I remember a few years back I saw a poll that said like Atlanta was one of like the more miserable sports towns a while back. I'm like, Don't they remember 2011, 2012 when the Falcons was actually good before they just crashed and burned and being disappointed in my eyes? But it's like I'm not sure how the Braves did. It seems like they're inconsistent at best, or they can do so good. They can be good when they want to be good, and when they're not, they're just not. But I want to say Dallas, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen how well the Stars or the Mavs have done.
I'd say they're pretty middle of the pack teams.
Yeah, but right now I think Dallas would be a contender in my book as far as stock is going down, especially when your biggest asset, the Dallas Cowboys, were one of the worst teams of the season. Injuries and all, but still one of the worst. I can't really think of another team. Maybe New York, but then the Jets and the Giants at the same time, they are hit or miss.
Yeah.
So I probably would go with the New York, New Jersey area as a reasonable stock market going down.
True. Well, yeah.
L.A. probably slowly rising, but I don't know. When you have the Lakers, when you have the Lakers, not so.
I mean, you have the Kings, and the Kings are pretty good.
Yeah, you have the Kings. The Clippers are better than they've been in the past. They've been better than the Lakers.
The problem is the Clippers are competitive in a time in the NBA where they have to either get through San Antonio, Golden State, or Cleveland if they reach the finals. And there's no way they're doing that. If they had gotten this hot, I'd say, 6 years ago, then yes, they would have had a shot back when LeBron was still
in Miami. Or before he was in Miami,
when he's still with Cleveland, when he was still developing as a player, and before they essentially created that all-star team. But yeah, it's
what other team do you think that are rising up a little bit and falling down? I think me, LA are right in the middle. Atlanta is they're inconsistent. New York, I seen them down because they're just inconsistent at best. And when you look at all the New York teams to some degree, they're just been mediocre, or they have promise but they're not promising right now.
That is tough. I don't know. That honestly is a.
Because I don't know. What do you think about the the state of Arizona as a whole?
Cardinals are good.
Yeah,
Cardinals are really good actually. The Coyotes are competitive in the NHL more than they have been in recent years. I think they have a winning record right now, which is surprising. They were in the hunt for a playoff spot, but I think they've fallen a little bit too far behind. Obviously, the major downside is the Suns right now with a 15-50 record or something. That number is what is holding me back from getting tickets to the Suns during spring break, because I don't know if I want to spend my money and watch a program that is not that good right now. But
you think they're going up or down or right in the middle?
I think right now. I think they're in a down. You mean the state of Arizona, or
the state?
Suns?
Pretty much the state of Arizona as a whole, mainly in the Phoenix area.
I think they're all going to be looking up except for the Suns. I think they're going to have a couple rough years here as Devin Booker gets better. They've had all sorts of issues with their players, Markieff and Marcus Morris, some attitudes and stuff. So I think they need to take a step back and figure it out. I don't think they should tank like the 76ers are doing, but I think they definitely need to figure it out a little bit. I think they have a good future in Devin Booker. They can keep the kid. But yeah, I think they're on a little bit of an upswing. I wish Seattle had an NBA team.
Yeah.
I honestly do.
I would consider them going up, but they don't have the NBA team. It seems like the Mariners just needs to have that, get something going in order for that to
Mariners
happen.
need a good year, because it's been a while, and the fact that they're the only American League team that has not played in the World Series yet. They're one of two teams that hasn't reached the World Series yet, and the other team was the Nationals, who were created
in
well, not
2004.
Yeah, not too long
when it
ago,
used to be
so-
the Montreal Expos, which in '94 there could have many people saying they would have been World Series contenders in '94 before the strike happened.
Yeah, so it's tough. I guess.
But I think since 2001, I think the Nationals might have made it to one or two postseasons in their brief history.
Oh yeah, it's
They
the Mariners
had
have
to
been in a little bit of a playoff drought for
Yeah,
a
since
while.
2001, even 02 and 03 when they had like winning records, they still didn't make it because you had the Anaheim Angels and the Oakland A's right on your tails in those 2 seasons alone.
Yeah, but I don't know. If Seattle had an NBA team, if we had our Sonics back, I think it would be a lot more interesting to follow Seattle sports year round because I mean the Sounders are a good team, but there's not as much interest in Major League Soccer as there should be, and Seahawks are good, but right now I think they need to figure it out mentally after losing that Super Bowl to New England, and yeah, the Mariners just right now they can't seem to quite put all the pieces together. Hopefully this is their year to do that, but if not, it's going to be another long stretch because they're going to have a huge contract in Robinson Cano that they are legally tied to for the next 7 or 8 years, and Nelson Cruz certainly is not cheap either, and Felix Hernandez is loyal to the program, but he's one man, he can't do it all. So we have hit our noon mark today, so unfortunately we're going to have to cut our program off, but we want to thank you guys for listening, and here is our shameless self-promotion. Follow us on Twitter at Vandal Nation for the latest news and updates, scoring updates, injury updates, quotes from press conferences, the whole shebang. Follow us on Facebook, Vandal Nation, to see links to our stories. Check out our website, www.thevandalnation.com, to read the latest news and coverage, features and profiles on our athletes on campus, and follow our Twitter. Oh, sorry, we already did the Twitter. Follow our Instagram, The Vandal Nation, to check out some photos from our photographers, as well as game posts and kind of the crowd atmosphere of how it all goes down. And as always, pick up a copy of The Argonaut around campus and check out the sports section where all of our work is put in. We're going to have some coverage of the games, and I think next week we're going to have a few columns, and hopefully we'll be able to get a Stacey Barr interview, or I know they're in the crunch time of their season, but I'll try and get that set up, and yeah. So follow us on all those social media accounts, and make sure to check out our websites. Luis, what are your final words before we have to go off air?
All right, final words will have to be, hopefully, the next couple of weeks here is a little bit better weather like we had early in the week, and it's down the stretch. Women's got to step it up, men's got to keep doing what they're doing, and got to power through.
Yep. All right. Final words of the day. Study for your midterms, everybody. Spring break is just 2 weeks away, and it will come quicker than you think, but first you got to get through those exams, so take a couple hours and study for those, and it'll pay off. But thank you guys for listening. We'll be back Friday at 3:30. I will not be here next Sunday, but Luis will be, and he will discuss all sorts of Vandal sports, so tune in. You're listening to 4th and Downtown on KUOI 89.3 FM Moscow. Thank you.